Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 821A, and today's date is November 18th, 2015, and the title of this episode is, As the Economy Collapses, U.S. Pushes to Revoke Passports from Tax Delinquent Citizens. Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. Tomorrow, Thursday, I'll be uploading an interview with Stephen Lenman. We had him on the X22 Report Spotlight once before. We talk about Paris, we talk about Syria, we talk about Russia, and where we are headed. If you are on the X22 Report email alert system, I will email you. If you're on the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel and you signed up there and you're a subscriber, YouTube should send you an email. If not, just come right over to the channel and you can see the video there. Or you can come over to the x22report.com site, scroll down a little bit, look over to your right hand side, you'll see the video. Or you can go to the news site, which is newssentinel.com. This is where we're streaming in news from all around the world in real time. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now we're going to head right out to Greece, and we understand in Greece the problem is still there. The country is in a huge amount of debt. The people don't have work. The people are being taxed. The youth unemployment is continually rising. And basically, what is happening in Greece is really not getting any better for the people. It might be getting better for the bankers, the creditors, and others who are on the top tier. But for the people, all they see is more and more of their hard-earned money leaving their pockets. And they had a protest in Greece. It was by farmers. And we haven't seen a protest like this in a couple of years, especially with the farmers. And busloads of men and women arrived across Greece to protest the looming over-taxation and social security changes that the government enforced. Now, they came out and they threw oranges, they threw, bottles, and the police met them with tear gas, sound cannons, and it really got heated at one point. And we can see many of the countries around the world, they're getting fed up with the private Western Central Bank system. And of course, most of these governments are hooked into this system, and we're starting to see that as more and more people get taxed, they're becoming angry. And this is why all the governments at this point are preparing for something like this. Now, we see out in Greece, the situation is what we should all expect as we move down this road here, because Greece really collapsed. It's being propped up with debt. Many of the people are not working. A lot of the businesses have closed, and assets of Greece are being sold off. And we can see at this point that this will spread to more and more countries. Now, the government officials or government employees, they realize this is going to happen. And they're taking precautions to control the people. Now, here in the States, they're keeping the illusion alive. They need to keep the illusion alive until they get that special event where they can blame this on another group or country. So here in the United States, they're trying to convince us that housing is fine, retail is fine. The stock market is going to continually go up. Yes, it drops a little bit. It goes up a little bit. It drops a little bit. But it looks like they're keeping it stable at this point. And of course, as we know, they have the high-frequency traders, the plunge protection team, the free money from the Fed to pump into the market and keep this alive. But we see that housing, this is starting to completely implode on itself. The bubble is now deflating a little bit. It's going to pop. And we see that new and pending sales have tumbled. Lumber prices are dropping dramatically. Home builder sentiment is starting to drop. And now we see housing starts. They have collapsed by 11% in October to the weakest level since March. This is the biggest miss month on month since February. I mean, multifamily unit starts, they plunged by 25.5%. Single family dropped by 2.5%. The West, the South plunged by 30.8%. What we're seeing is a collapse of the housing market at this point. And there's nothing they can do to keep and prop this up. Yes, they can create the free money. They can give it to the hedge funds, investment companies to purchase homes. But as more and more people decide, you know something, I'm nervous about my job. I know a lot of people that got laid off. We hear more and more layoffs coming down the pike. What they do is they say, you know, this is not a good time. Second of all, I don't have enough saved. And these housing prices are still too high. Yes, they are coming down quite a bit. It's getting harder and harder to sell a home. I'm seeing homes on the market now 180, 190 days. And they are continually dropping their prices. Now, is this happening in every single location? No. But this is how it starts. It starts in small little locations all around the country, and it spreads. And this is what we're seeing right now. I remember back in 2008, when I lived in New York, I saw housing prices coming down, traffic drying up, but other parts of the country were fine still. And then 6 to 8 months later, it spread everywhere. And actually, those places where they said they were fine actually ended up being worse off. Now, we know manufacturing is, just imploding on itself. There's no other word for this. And we see that this is definitely going to affect retail. And we know that all of this is happening because the people are losing jobs. The people don't have discretionary funds. And whatever they have, they're keeping. They're nervous. They're afraid. The Baltic Dry Index right now, which is kind of hard to manipulate and gives us a real indicator of what is happening with the global economy, has now dropped to an all-time record low. It is absolutely awful. We are down to 519, down another 18 points. And when we look back in time, I'll give you some examples here. If we go back to 2005, the average Baltic Dry Index was around 3,000. 2006, it was around 4,000. 2007, the year right before the major collapse in the Great Recession, we hit 11,000. And then 2008 came, and the average was about 600 or so. And basically, by the Fed creating free money through the QE programs, they were able to pump all of this up, the real estate market and everything else, and the Baltic Dry Index rose to about 4,100. And then ever since then, we have been declining. Last year, the Baltic Dry Index, the average, was around 1,100. The year before that, it was like 1,300. Right now, we are continually falling during this time of year. This is absolutely awful. This shows us that the global economy, it's not recovering at all. It shows us there is something wrong. It's either the government is lying about everything they're telling us, or all this information is completely wrong. Now, I'm going to go with the government is lying because it's very hard to manipulate the shipment of raw material. It's a lot easier to manipulate the unemployment numbers and say, okay, listen, you see these 500,000 people? We're just not going to count them because they're not looking for a job. So we'll just drop the unemployment now down to 5%. It's a lot easier to do that. It's a lot easier to manipulate GDP. It's a lot easier to manipulate inflation. And we can see the government is trying to keep this illusion alive, trying to pretend that everything is fine. Now, it seems that the police at this point, through their civil asset forfeitures, they have exceeded the value of all burglaries in 2014. Between 1989 and 2010, U.S. attorneys seized an estimated $12.6 billion in asset forfeiture cases. The growth rate during that time was about 19%. In 2010 alone, the The value of assets grew by 52% from 2009 and was 6 times greater than the total for 1989. Then by 2014, that number ballooned to about 4.5 billion for the year, making this 35% of the entire number of assets collected from 1989 to 2010 in a single year. Now, according to the FBI, the total amount of goods stolen by criminals in 2014, burglary offenses, was estimated around 3.9 billion. So this means the police are now taking more assets than the criminals. I mean, remember, when they take your money, they take your property, they don't have to prove anything. They don't have to prove a single thing. They can just take it and they don't have to return it. This is the best crime scam I have ever seen. And it's legal. That's what makes it perfect. And the criminals, they should become police officers. Then they can get all the stuff they want. Because that's exactly what the police are doing. Now, we realize that the government, they're having a tougher and tougher time trying to collect revenue from the people. This is why they're keeping the interest rates very, very low. This is why they created and printed money to prop up the economy. This is why they created laws like FATCA, Obamacare. They were trying to bring as much as they possibly could into the government because the debt is just so high. If interest rates went up, it would be a complete disaster. So now they're trying something else. And they're going to keep trying all these different things and put pressure on the people. And they don't realize the people, they're tapped out. People are losing jobs. I mean, think about this for a second. You work for a couple of years in a company. You're paying your bills. You're living paycheck to paycheck. And you get laid off. Say around September, October, November. And you use that money, and whatever money you have in your account, to survive. Well, that money that you earn throughout that year is taxable, of course, and you owe the IRS taxes. But of course, you use that money to survive, to live, to pay whatever bills you have to pay. But the IRS, they want their money. Now, you don't have any money to give, but the government, the central bank, doesn't care. And they think that you're hiding it someplace, that you're doing something tricky to not pay them. So right now, if you owe the Internal Revenue Service more than $50,000, and it always starts out high, so everyone goes, yes, those people making a lot of money, they're the ones who are going to have to pay. Well, if you're making more than $50,000, if you owe more than $50,000 in taxes, you could soon have your U.S. passport taken away. Now, they're starting out at this high number, so everyone says, okay, I only owe $3,000. I don't have to worry about this at this point. But you know what happens. This is how they start. They start off very high, and they say, okay, everyone with $25,000, everyone that owes $15,000. And then finally, if you just owe taxes, guess what? They're going to take your passport away. You will not be able to leave this country. And what's very interesting is that this passport measure will raise they're estimating about 400 million over 10 years. I mean, this doesn't do anything to the debt whatsoever. So there's a different agenda behind this. And also, what about all those people living abroad, working outside the country, that owe more than $50,000 in taxes? And maybe they don't have it. Maybe it's over a certain period of time. Will their passports be revoked? And what happens to those people who are living in different countries? So this is very interesting. They tried FATCA. They tried Obamacare. Now they want to revoke your passports because they think you're hiding money someplace. And we know the IMF put out a generalized tax of about 10%, where they're saying, let's take everyone's wealth and we'll charge them 10%. Of course, they want to use this to pay off the private Western Central Bank debts that the governments owe. And they're trying the carbon tax. If we tell everyone they're ruining the environment, we can go ahead and tax the people. Of course, they're not going to use the money for anything that's related to the environment, because the IMF director, Christine Lagarde, already said this would be a perfect time to basically tax everyone through carbon to pay off this monstrous debt around the world. And this is how we know that this whole entire plan, everything that they're doing at this point, it's to pay off this debt, because this system is collapsing. It will not survive, and they know this. And this is why they're looking to get as much as they possibly can before the system crashes. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.